coordination with Black Girls Hack and the Care Lab. And I'm super excited because of the fact that I get to hang out with these wonderful Black men here in tech and cybersecurity, which is absolutely amazing because I feel like we don't see enough of our fellow unicorns in the space. So I'm super excited about this. So I will not attempt to butcher or do injustice to your introduction. So I will let you each introduce yourselves. Hakeem, do you want to start off first?
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Hakeem Thomas. I've been in tech nearly 20 years, multiple capacities. Currently, I am a technical project manager for Randstad Digital, overseeing zero trust implementation.
Awesome. Jamie, you want to go next?
Yeah, pleasure and humbled. Jamie Williams, been in tech for about 10 years. Government adjacent roles, mostly doing like offensive research, red teaming, adversary simulation, threat intelligence. So in that space, and I apologize in advance for you having to watch me steep tea. Like I'm terrible at this, but it is that time of day. So looking forward to this.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least, Ian.
Yes, thank you. So I'm Ian Kemble. I've been in tech for about six and some change now, six and a half years or so. I'm a software engineer and currently working through a program called Black Tech Philly. Mainly, I've been doing a lot of engineering with a variety of different technologies from Salesforce, a little bit of HubSpot. Natively, a JavaScript engineer. But in my capacity at Black Tech Philly, I orchestrate different programs focused on education to schools across the city.
Awesome. I love the fellow nonprofit so you understand the struggle absolutely. So I heard project manager, technical project manager. I heard offensive security. I heard software engineer. Who wants to get started? Who wants to talk to us about what that actually involves and how did you get there? What does that look like?
Yeah, I can go ahead and kick it off then. It means a lot. Like it's funny because I'm hearing everyone's background and I think like it all sounds so different, but it's all the same. Like we're solving a lot of the same problems with just different skills, different perspective, different accountability or different responsibilities. So it's kind of, and that's one of the big lessons I've always taken to heart, especially in the space we're in, and not even just in the tech space, but broader, is we're all on the same team. We have, it's just finding where our shared outcomes and our shared success criteria is. But, more than likely we can find some common ground and figure out how to do this together and actually appreciate each other's like diverse backgrounds and insights. And, I've written maybe two or three JavaScripts in my in my life, but hearing what Ian does, hearing what Hakeem does, and hearing about all the educational background is phenomenal. Just because I think that cross pollination is really to your point about how we get there. I think that's how you get there is figuring out, where are you most passionate? Where are you most capable? What actually gets you excited in the morning? And like, I think that's what really, turns a job into a career where you're like, this is, it sounds cheesy, but like I'm doing what feels right. And I think a lot of people try to look for that silhouette of, hey, I need to like, I need to follow that path or I need to like be a certain kind of, professional. And I think there's some of that, but it's also balancing of like, what are you good at? What do you, how do you see the world that maybe other people don't? What kind of skills do you bring to the table that, can be refined, can be enhanced, can be groomed, but also just brings something new and something that just lacks. And I think that's where you really, I think your point earlier about being that unicorn, I think that's that really, you really find that is like, and I think that's, I hate to speak in super cheesy analogies, but like letting that little light shine of like, this is who I am, this is what I'm all about. And finding the right people that, are actually have the grace and respect to acknowledge that and really help you take off.
Absolutely. Ian?
Yeah, to piggyback off of what Jamie mentioned and what you kicked us off with in terms of just the diversity of technical expertise that's on this call, and it's going to get cheesy. We might as well get the charcuterie board out. It's going to get cheesy, but um, to emphasize just that education and how much finding what you're good at, finding what you're passionate about. Um, in terms of kind of building on this, a big part of what my mission is, and as Jamie mentioned, all of us have a similar vision, is just sharing this knowledge, sharing this type of information, and getting it out to as many people as early as possible. Kind of working with young people on a daily basis. They show so much potential. Obviously, like all youth are just pockets of potential, just waiting to be realized. And the nice thing about what we do, and more broadly, just uh, this industry that we, refer to as technology, there's so many different opportunities in this space that isn't just exclusive to software engineering, right? It's not just exclusive to security or data science. There are creative jobs in this industry, right? There are more scientific jobs in this industry, and just making people, especially young people, aware that you don't have to be, expert at math and be able to do rocket science to do the things that we do. You can have an enriching, very satisfying life, or whatever you want in this world, just with these, just dedicating and focusing on one specific, avenue of technology. So yeah, that would be my what I would like to add to that.
Awesome. And Hakeem.
I'll be honest, I feel empowered. I don't forgot what your original question was. They just
I,
motivated
Go
me
with
a
the
little
flow,
bit.
Hakeem.
what does it mean? You're a technical project manager. What does that mean to someone who may be looking to get into a similar field? What does that look like day to day?
So I would say first, there's a difference between a regular project manager and a technical one. So for me, I come from a very technical background, blue team, red team, social engineering. So that allowed me to kind of do project management roles a little bit different. So day to day, I'm usually on 12 to 13 meetings a day, managing 3 multi-million dollar projects. As I mentioned earlier, it's for zero trust implementation, which is in itself a niche. So because I have previous background with that, from implementation to writing operating procedures and white papers and stuff like that, that kind of gives me a leg up when I am managing a project with engineers, right? Because I come from a technical background, I can speak their language. I can understand when they're struggling a bit more. I can also know when they're just telling me anything I want to hear to try to expedite my notes, right? Don't calls. So it allows me to kind of call out things a little bit better. But the big thing is just understanding the language that they're speaking, especially when we're talking to vendors and then my engineer. So myself having that background really does help out, facilitate the projects a little bit better. Sometimes you have a PM that might not be as technical, but more of a manager role. So
Awesome. And I just want to make sure that everyone saw Rachel's message. Please feel free to shoot any questions any questions that you have into the chat or into the Q&A feature. And we'll be happy to get those answered. Until then, it is my question. So when we're talking about your career trajectory, there are multiple ways to get to where it is that you've gotten. How would you, like, if you wanted to give me a high level roadmap of what it takes to get to where you're at, what does that kind of look like?
Would you like to go, Jamie, or?
No, I don't have to bat lead off every time. You got it.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. So um, software development, computer science, there's a variety of ways to approach or get into this. Hopefully, if I were to speak to someone in high school, um, if they're hopefully their high school has something installed where they can start to learn just the basic fundamentals of programming. But beyond that, if I were just, a young adult, maybe college age, just exploring, there are plenty of resources online where you can learn different programming languages for free. There are organizations out here that would, they're built to share this type of information. The program that I'm a part of, Black Tech Philly, um, Tanisha, as you're in the same space, Black Girls Hack, where you can learn these skills and people are out there to share that with you. Again, YouTube, there are so many resources at this point to learn these skills. And I would say that it is something where, look, learning anything, the first thing is understanding what type of learner you are, right? Some people can learn independently. Other people need a little bit more guidance, maybe some hands-on, even down to just that style of, are you more visual? Are you more auditory? But that would be probably, if I had to suggest a roadmap. One, just exploring it from a very high level. It could just be as simple as just going on some YouTube videos, and then going on forums, maybe developing a plan for yourself and identifying what is the most successful way for you to learn. Is it doing something in person, or something hands-on where you can connect with a group like ours? Is it something where you might want to, go into a boot camp, or maybe take a college course? It could just be, if you're someone who can learn independently, maybe enroll online or into a program, or take some courses and build some projects. It would definitely be a lot more reading and writing, right? But it's certainly doable. And the I would say, in terms of the outlook moving forward, is definitely building projects, getting to that stage where you're starting to build things on your own, kind of taking the training wheels off of just following modules and starting building your own things, and continuing to learn would be the next phase. And just trying to get your resume and your portfolio out there. That is probably the hardest part of all of this. I'm sure everyone on this call can relate, is getting that first job. Whether you're coming out of college, coming out of boot camp, maybe even you're self-taught. And, in this particular environment, it's probably harder than another. It's not impossible, though. It certainly will test your patience and your persistence, but always building and continuing to learn, because this is an industry where you always have to learn something. Um, so that would probably be my recommendation if I were to give someone advice on how to get started in software development and uh, s- yeah, excuse me, software development. That would be my suggestion. That would be the steps that I would suggest someone to take.
Awesome. Hakeem, Jamie?
Yeah, I would say PM route. It's very interesting because it's not like a one size fit all. For me, I just took a straight technical approach, from help desk, system admin, things of that nature, to digital forensics, social engineering, pen testing. Um, College, yeah, I went to college, got a degree. I don't have PMP, I don't have Scrum Master, right? I just leverage my years of experience to be a project manager. And that's not always the case. Sometimes you might start off as a product owner or business analyst, might have to get Scrum Master or PMP, depending on where you are in your career, in order to become a PM. Um, I'm fortunate not to have to do that, just to leverage my experience. Even from a technical aspect, like it was mentioned earlier about kind of being a jack of all, right? That's kind of been my career, is learn as much as I can, and then master specific things, right? As I mentioned earlier, now is the zero trust aspect. I mastered that. Now that's my niche right now. Before that, it was forensics. Before that, it was social engineering, things of that nature. So
Jamie?
Yeah, when you asked about a roadmap, the word that I couldn't get out of my head was like chaos. And I agree, like it's exactly as Ian and Hakeem said, like it's like so many different ways. Like some I went to college and did like, all that there's some parts that I still use from that, some parts I absolutely forgot. I look at the textbooks, I'm like, I don't know why I read that. That was a waste of time. I took classes, went to, community events, did all this, online engagement. And I think the more important point is, again, not looking at like, hey, there's got to be one way to do this. It's really, and my biggest advice here is find the organizations and more importantly, the people that think similar to you. And you're like, I trust these people. They have same aspirations. They have the same goals. And now, exactly as the two folks before me shared, I can share ideas like, hey, that training was good. That training is bad. You need to meet with this person. You need to go do this little workshop, watch this video, read this book, and you slowly kind of grow together. And it's funny too, because when you build these networks, it's it's almost feel like you're slowly taking over the world. Where like, you're just a little speck on a map, but you're like, okay, I have friends here, 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 here. And these aren't just like friends, like buddies that I know. These are people that I know, like, have the same kind of drive I do. They're looking for the same things. It's almost like they have the same lens of the world and they're kind of like doing my own bidding for me. And I'm providing that feedback back to them. And I think that's where, when you reach that point, you're really starting to cook a little bit because you're like, I actually feel empowered to, exactly as they said, explore new territories, especially within the offensive security space. It's all about that leap of faith where, you might be really good at Linux or Windows or something. Then all of a sudden cloud comes in and zero trust. And you're like, not only do I have to understand those things, I have to figure out how to break it. And I have to be able to show value to an organization of, hey, I'm not just, you know, typing on a keyboard and, generating keystrokes. I'm actually showing you how to fix things and actually, putting a little bit of, dollar value and ROI, I'm sorry, acronyms, return on investment behind it. Like I'm actually bringing something to the table. And that isn't something that you're going to do by yourself. If you're one of those, I'm an only child. I can sit in a room all day by myself and not talk to anyone and be completely happy. But even if you're a little bit of an introvert, you do kind of have to put yourself out there, but it becomes a lot more comfortable when you're like, hey, these are my people. Like we can sit, we can sit here and watch a video together, not share a word, but after, talk about it all day, text about it, share links. So, hey, did you see this? Did you see that? And it just, it not, again, not saying you need to hop on LinkedIn and start promoting all this stuff or jump on Twitter or there's one exact way to do this. It's mostly just figure out, again, what kind of makes you tick? Like where are you? And you'll slowly start to figure out that bubble of like, this is the people that, I can actually trust. And when they say, hey, come work on this project or come check this out, like I know it's actually aligned with, where I want to be and where I want to go.
Awesome. You guys, actually, my next question was going to be that I had kind of LinkedIn stalked you all to see your background. And I was going to say, like, Ian came from political science, web development, and there was some AR, VR in there. And Jamie comes from a system engineering background, and for Hakeem, it was digital forensics and information assurance. And the question that we had in the chat was, is there a linear straight path or is it trial and error? And I think that what we've heard so far is that, you can kind of like define where you're going and pivot at any point in time just based off of whatever it is that you've, decided that, hey, this is what's going to drive me and keep me going. So I absolutely love that for us because we've covered that without even being prompted. So my next question, challenges. I mentioned earlier, I was super excited because we are a panel of, or you guys are a panel of Black men, and we don't tend to see that a lot. So can you talk to us a little bit about maybe some of the hurdles or challenges that you face just being a Black man in the tech and cybersecurity landscape that, maybe people might be facing? Um,
I'll start with this one. So when I started my tech career in 2004, there wasn't many Black folks in the field. I'm originally from Philadelphia, and that's why I started my career at. It wasn't many of us. I would go to conferences when they first started up. It was less than 10, right? And one of the other people in the room was my supervisor. So it was tough to one, get your foot in the door and then to grow. Typically, once you got in, especially as an African American, you stayed there until you got tired of it. There wasn't that many allies, even within our own community. There wasn't many allies, so you just kind of got in where you fit in and hoped and prayed that you wasn't terminated. You didn't do anything that cause your company money, right, and to get fired because you wouldn't get another opportunity. It's not as much like that now as it was then, but it was a struggle initially. My first 3 years in the field, I struggled if I fit in. This wasn't my first passion. I was going to be a stockbroker, and one day I woke up in new computers, and my path was written. And it was a struggle. I think Jimmy mentioned earlier about how you learn, right? I'm not a books person. I'm a visual learner, so I was self-taught everything I know about computers. Education-wise, it just helped, but it was more self-taught, and that was really how it was back then. You didn't really have a lot of mentors and people to show you the way. So when we had a big issue and we called in a high price consultant in to come fix it, I would just stare at them and mimic what they were doing, taking notes. So that way the next time we had an issue, we didn't have to pay $1,000 an hour for them. I could fix it. And I was able to then show my worth and leverage that to get raises and promotions and then jump companies and things of that nature. But yeah, it was important. And I actually did a stint in the military, and it was the same way, right? My first unit, I was the only black person. I was only a minority, period, in 210 people, right? So that in itself was a struggle to climb ranks and to show my worth, right? But if you want it hard enough, you'll make it, right? And that was been my motto my whole career, and that's why I try to help others now because I remember when we didn't have people that look like me, right? We didn't have panels like this, right? So.
Absolutely. Jamie?
Yeah. 100% agree with everything said. And I think kind of a similar experience, like whether it's explicit or it's even like a little bit more subtle, there's always going to be those biases and those stereotypes and things that just kind of overlay. And that's kind of been the story of my experience is like, obviously you've dealt with like very, very like explicit, like, oh, like, hey, I call someone out. I feel like that was racist. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, have a good life, whatever. But then there's also like there's those microaggressions. And like the one that's always gotten me throughout my career is like the word actually. Like it's very subtle, but it's like, oh, you actually speak very well. Or like, oh, that was actually really smart. And I'm like, I think that was a compliment, but like that actually tells me a little bit about how you actually think and how you actually see and what you actually are going to like proceed into the future. And very similar to what Hakeem said, I think that's been the challenge is like really attacking words like that and saying, okay, exactly like you said, I need to break that down. I need to show you that we're people, hey, and within our own experiences, we have our own circles, we have our own bubbles where we take care of each other and we look out for each other and we, kind of share these experiences. But at a broader scale, like as an organization or as a company, like I really need you to see past that. And I think it's showing value, but it's also kind of being, and I think that's where these networks are really important is like standing up for things where you're like, hey, whether I'm going to call it out, I'm going to talk to someone like, hey, like, did you mean, I don't know if you meant this, but like, hey, when you say stuff like that, it kind of means this. And if you didn't mean it like in that way, like hopefully we can correct and kind of, fix things in the future. And if you did, I now understand actually how you feel about things. And that's gonna change a little bit of our trajectory in the future. So long way of saying, and I think that's one of those that's why it's really important also just have networks where you can, whether it's one person, two people, you can kind of, not everyone, exactly like Akeem said, not everyone's going to be have this experience, whether, whatever your situation is, whatever your position, you really do need those trust networks where you can say, hey, I'm perceiving this and this is how it makes me feel. This is my meaning making of it. Is that reasonable? This is how I'm going to handle it. Is this, is this a good idea? Is this a good look? Should I course correct? Do I need to put it in writing? Should I like talk to the person on the side at the water cooler? Should I, happy hour, tap on the shoulder, whatever it is. But I think that's just being, and especially where we are in 2024, like nothing's going away. It's just becoming, things are becoming more and more subtle and potentially, unintentional in a lot of cases. You're like, hey, I say stuff all the time. I'm like, oh man, I didn't mean that. Like, my bad. Like, I actually didn't mean that. Thank you for correcting me. But I think it's just really important to just kind of, again, like exactly like Hakeem said, just be aware of like how the implications of how people see you, how people treat you, and how that kind of changes, this what we all like to believe is completely equity between everyone. but also how you can potentially fix things and say, okay, just because I lived through something doesn't mean the next person needs to, the next person needs to. How can I, even if it's just one person, one situation, one company, one meeting, whatever it is, how can I potentially fix things? And maybe in a lot of cases, open people's eyes and say, you didn't actually mean this. But when you say stuff like that, it cascades and people lose sleep, they lose confidence, and that affects not just their own personal well-being, but that affects their ability to be a successful employee and a successful colleague because they're just constantly worried about, hey, exactly like Hakeem said, like, am I doing a good job? If they start making cuts or people start getting evaluated, I might be at the bottom list because not because of my own doing, but because of who I am as a person. So I just think it's always good to just be mindful and not. And I think for a long time, I grew up in the a little bit of all over the place. My family's from Louisiana. I grew up in the South where a lot of that was like, hey, if you're not in the right situation, just kind of tuck it under, get out of here, don't worry about it. But I think a lot of, especially where we are today, like I think we have a lot of systems and a lot of, not perfect systems, but at least some protections to say, what, I'm going to say something. Like it's not going to be huge. It might not be this huge, like blown out situation, but I think, there's enough, safeguards in place where I feel confident enough to be like, okay, actually the way that made me felt is XYZ. And I think, unless that was, hey, intend exactly what you thought it to mean, let's be better. And I think that's one of those things where it's important to have that community in that community of trust where you can have those conversations without people, being vindictive or taking it the wrong way or, again, even blowing up from where it is. Like, hey, it's a slip of a word, whatever. Let's just straighten that out and go forward.
I don't think that I'm going to look at the word actually in conversation the same ever again in life now. So thank you for that, sir.
It's like nails on a
Ian.
chalkboard for me. Sorry.
I do like, Jamie, how you fit in actually though to address actually. I you had bars there, my friend. Um, but yeah, to continue on that theme of just kind of community and finding solidarity in these spaces, that is a challenge. From Hakeem's experience when he was getting into the industry to Jamie's to even mine's now, um, it is something where Black people in this industry are still somewhat underrepresented. We are still underrepresented, and it still is something where uh, the work cultures still it's chugging, but there's still a lot of friction in areas and things that need to be addressed. And finding solidarity with people, whether people that are look like you in your workspaces or just outside of your workspaces is important to be able to have those dialogues. um, I will say sometimes one of the challenges with finding solidarity is also the fact that for me at least, and I believe we can all agree on this, is that Black culture isn't a monolith, and unfortunately, not everyone's going to have the same goals, same perspectives, and view as you do on certain topics that relate to work. There are, and it's probably been said and expressed in so many ways. There are folks who are like, I'll just put it like this: I'm OJ. I'm not, what I'm saying? No, I'm not OJ, obviously, but the expression "I'm not Black, I'm OJ," right? There are folks like that in certain spaces. There are folks who, they deal with those type of challenges, those microaggressions where it's like, you know what, I'm just gonna put my head down. I don't even want to be involved in DIE. I don't want to champion this, and I just want to get my work done and get out of here. And that's how that person deals with it, right? Even the topic of DIE for some folks can be very uncomfortable, right? It's shaking up the room for everybody, and it doesn't seem as though it would shake up the room for Black folks, but there are people who do get uncomfortable. Um, so I will say it is something where you when navigating in this industry, as continue to progress in your career, those are going to be things that come up. There are going to be people you work with who are going to say really wild things, and the scale of wildness can vary. There might be policies or things that happen that conflict with like what is actually, something that's respectful to who you are. Um, I will say that's not to discredit or say that these things are valued. In fact, I think it is important that we have these conversations, that they do continue, that we can over time change how certain work cultures express themselves. It will take time, but I think we've made a lot of progress, um, from, I'm sure, Hakeem, like from when you started to where we are now. It might not be, perfect, but we're getting there. And obviously it's going to take time, but I think part, for me at least, those challenges is like recognizing that there is a challenge when it comes to um, you know, subconscious biases in these workspaces. But there's also a challenge of some, that aspect of not everybody wants to be a champion for DIE. Not everybody wants to. Um, some people just want to feel safe and not have to rock the boat. Some people don't care, right? They'll rock it until everybody fall off, and that's cool too. And we need those people, but I think to kind of address this challenge is just finding people who you can talk to, who you can express these type of things with, and who you can maybe formulate and try to find ways to make things more accommodatable for not just yourself but for everybody moving forward. But obviously, specifically, for folks that look like you. So that would be my little contribution there.
I gotta
Awesome.
say, like you gave me flowers for bars, but I missed. There might have been a third. You quoted what
Oh,
Jay-Z, Aaliyah, like you hit a couple key points there. That was
thank you.
tight.
I heard it also. Are you from DC, Ian? Because I swear like I heard some DC in the early
Uh, No,
so
I got peoples down there, and but no, I'm from Philly. I just adopt
gotcha.
certain mannerisms, I suppose.
So, a question from the Q&A. What are some of the strategies you found effective in overcoming these barriers and biases in your field and roles?
That's a great question. Um, I wish I'd known this now, but I'll always preach this now is don't take things personal. Right. Earlier in my career, I took everything personal, right? Any racist comment in the workplace, um, any slight, based on my skin color, things of that nature. And it because I took it personal, I showed aggression a lot, especially in my military career. Showed a lot of aggression early on. And I had to learn to hone that anger in and stay professional, right? And it was when I did that that I learned how to kind of work around those blocks that was happening, right? I learned to move around racism in my first unit in the military, move around lack of promotion earlier in my career, right? Even though I seen my Caucasian peers who I was way better than in the field get the promotions, the people that I actually train, I mentor and things like that. I learned how to maneuver around that, right? Which is keep working hard and also leave organizations, right? The if you are in that type of space, especially for too long, you kind of become content with it, right? Your blinders come on, right? And I had to be okay with moving on, right? But I think it starts with don't take it personal because taking it personal can really build up inside you, and that can hinder you more than what's going on around you.
I love being willing to leave to avoid having to endure any more abuse. I feel like that's a
Absolutely,
message.
absolutely,
It's a whole
absolutely.
message.
Well said.
Um, who else has not answered some of the biases or ways to combat them?
I can go.
Yes, sir.
So it's a little bit different, but I agree with the don't take it personally, and especially like don't let people kind of rattle your cool. Like be you, don't let people kind of get inside your headspace. But the one that's really helped me is write stuff down. Like I'm naturally like I'm like, oh, I remember stuff, like whatever, I'll figure it out. But like not saying you need to like, have this huge list and like, I have this like, to-do list of people who wronged me and I'm gonna get back. But even if it's just for you, I like write stuff down and like this no one in the world will ever see this. besides me, but I'm like, I see patterns. And I'm like, oh, the same thing happened over and it's the same people or like the same kind of thing. And even just that reflection on you is really important because like you start to see, okay, these are the situations that things happen and whether it's I need to start talking to other people and getting help or just, hey, exactly like you said, I'm going to avoid this because the last 3 times something happened, look, it's same outcome. And then I think where this really takes off is you'll never sometimes you'll very often, you'll never predict it. It'll just surprise you. But a day will come where you have an opportunity to make a change and someone will say, hey, personal example, someone reached out to me and said, hey, we want to do more diverse hiring. We're having a hard time. What do you recommend? And the last thing you want to do is, I don't know, like, oh, and not have a plan versus like, oh, cool, I've written down, oh, let me go look my notes real quick. I got you, like, boom, 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 let's do this. Or someone reaches out and says, like, hey, like, I think there's an issue about so and so. Is that something you experienced? And you're like, I don't know. And you're like, give me 10 seconds. Yep. I'm not going to air any names, but that's happened to me 3 times in the last year. I think you're spot on. So I think just having that kind of almost like a journal, and it could be, just scratch notes or whatever it is. But I think one of the things, and I think it's almost very similar to what we talked about in the last question is, I think, people deserve grace and respect. Forgiveness is a virtue, but I think we just can't forget. You just can't keep, especially in this career where burnout, like especially in tech, it's so easy to burn yourself out with the job itself, but you can't expect yourself to deal with all the extra burden of I'm working this very complex job that constantly evolves and changes and I have to chase it with all this on my back with all this extra noise and nonsense and foolishness that I have to deal with. So the more you can alleviate and keep kind of that clear sight of I see the goal, I see, I understand the objective, I understand the assignment, and I can focus on that without all the environmentals getting in the way. And I think that's really only possible, at least in my experience, if I kind of, whether it's once a week, once a month, look back and just kind of almost meditate on what went well this month, what went what really worked, what are things that got in the way, and then the things that for both of those look back and say how common is this? Am I on a groove? Like last 3 months I've been crushing it because I've been doing XYZ, but this thing's been getting in the way, and oh, it was the same last month, it was the same last year. I really need to, I'm never going to make that next kind of step or where I want to be until I address that or somehow remove it from my atmospheric. So long way of saying receipts, even if it's just kind of you looking in the mirror and writing it down for yourself just to hold yourself accountable for I'm not going to tolerate this, or I'm not going to deal with this, or I'm not going to pretend like I'm not good at this and not give myself flowers for, hey, you've been doing, Jamie, you've been crushing it, keep doing that thing you're doing because it might go somewhere.
That sounded like a lie, women lie, but numbers don't. That's what I
Oh
heard.
no.
Hakeem, did you already answer this one?
Yeah, I went already, but at the end, can I just touch back on one more thing? I would to
Yes,
at the
sir.
end go.
No, go ahead, Hakeem. I want you to finish.
Okay. I was gonna say, because I mentioned like how you gotta stay professional, right? So what I've done in recent years is when I've been in that situation over the last couple of years, I left the organization, but I actually took some of their clientele with me, right? So what I've been doing is professionally getting back at them, right? Again, not keeping my cool, right? Because at the end of the day, your name is your name. You don't want to tarnish your name. But as I left the organization that put me in that, slighted me, had some racism, things of that nature, right? I left with clients, right? So for me, that was my best way to stick it to them was to take some of their clientele.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think, Hakeem Jamie said it best. And to me, how I look at it is like these are expressions of self-care, right? Like don't take it personal. Um, writing everything down to me from a professional level is just CYA, what I mean, covering your own, what I'm saying, right? And that's to me, that's important, right? Like the whole aspect of overcoming certain challenges is just having, your composure and, keeping track of what's going on from a professional level. Because whenever, I've had encounters, whether it was from a technical standpoint, some type of conflict with project manager, someone from, higher up on the product team, or even, something that was said that was wild. Um, to me, I would always revert to like they don't pay me enough to go through or tolerate certain types of behavior. Like, okay, I'm getting paid well, but not like that. Not for them to say what they're going to say or do what they're going to do, right? Because if you start to take those things too personally, you will be burnt out. You'll be stressed out. You'll be tired. You'll lose motivation to do what you're supposed to do, right? So to me is, I always kind of revert back to, those two things of not taking it personally, making sure I'm documenting things and trying to, ultimately have a good attitude. I'm here because I have the skills and, things are going to happen. I would say this more relates to, work challenges, but just having like a shooter's mentality, like a shooting guard mentality, where you basketball players that go on the court, you're not going to make every single shot. And at that level, for some people, it could be a hit to their ego. You just keep shooting. You forget, you keep shooting. Just keep on shooting. It'll average out. So yeah, that would be my thing of overcoming certain challenges where it's just like keep your energy right. Remember that you don't have to take this. You don't get paid enough to take certain types of abuse. No one should, right? Unless you're an executive where it is on you. And yeah, but other than that, good attitude and just try to keep going and forget from if it's stressing you out, move on, document it, move on, because you got to keep on playing at the end of the day. Like a lot of times, and I've seen this happen where like and know of people who, fortunately it hasn't occurred or happened to me, but like, folks being harassed or like uh a person doing little things to tick off uh a black person in the workspace and trying to get them to, be that angry black person stereotype. Even if it's all, not anything like that. Like, hey, you're poking this person. Of course, it's warranted. They're going to snap on you, right? I've seen that, and I'm sure we've all encountered, the Karen, right? Um, don't lose your composure. So that would be my thing.
I just want everyone to note that we've heard about world domination and shooting all shots thus far, and it wasn't me that brought up either one of those things. So, like,
I'm
just so
sorry.
you
Am I
know.
taking? Are things going off rails?
Oh
That's
no, I'm just no. I am a very strong advocate of shooting all shots and world domination. So these are my like life mantras. So I absolutely love it. I didn't even have to say it. So our
That's one of
next
my
question.
favorite Kobe quotes is what shoot or shoot. Like
shooter
as long as
shoot,
I'm on the court, shoot or shoot.
shooter shoot. You gotta
Absolutely.
keep shooting.
So what are some of the changes that you guys have seen in tech that demonstrate that it's becoming more welcoming environment to Black people and other people of colors? Or have there not been any changes? I'll give you both sides of that.
Ooh, I love that. The biggest one I've noticed is it's race and inclusivity and all these things used to be an afterthought where like you would join a team and you're like, oh, I'm trying to get a feel for how things are going. And like it wasn't something we talked about until something bad happened. It was always a knee jerk, like, oh, like that was icky, that was wrong. And then like we had our little training on like, oh, hey, workplace, harassment and, all this stuff. Or it was, 1 month a year we would talk about this and then it would just kind of disappear. And you're like, okay, cool, that was fun. Um, what I've really noticed is like it feels, at least in my experience, and like I said, this is all about building your bubble and building your network. It's one of the first things that comes up. Like we someone joins a team and we're like, hey, tell us about you, tell us how we respect you, how do we get you more included? What do you like? We're not going to tell you what we're working on. What do you want to work on? What are you good at? Who are you as a person? Hey, just I want to tell you up front before I'll get your name. And the second thing I'll tell you is if I ever cross a line, call me out. This is exactly how you do it. Or this is how you call me out to me directly. And this is how you call me out above me, to the left of me, to the right of me, depending on what you need. And I think it's just that harness because it's just, I think so many of us, across all spectrums have just been, just wailed on, just years and years of just like, hey, it's only a matter of time. It's like you can kind of almost, it's like that angst. You can feel it. Like, man, I can read the room. This is gonna get weird. It's just slip of the tongue, exactly like Ian said. It's gonna build up. Someone's gonna get mad. They're gonna say it. I can already tell what they're gonna say. They're itching to say it. Versus, hey, let's lay the rules of engagement out in front. And if you are already kind of squeamish at the ideas of inclusivity and mutual respect and all these things, we don't even need to see what you're going to do with it. Like, I get it. Like, hey, if this makes you uncomfortable, this isn't going to work. And I think just having that, and again, this isn't going to solve all the problems. This isn't going to save the world, but at least we've set up some type of, getting back to roadmaps, we have a system for dealing with it that everyone is already can acknowledge and like respect and kind of even build on of, hey, I bring you on the team and I say, hey, this is how we do inclusivity. And they might have a good idea of, hey, that doesn't work. Maybe we should do this. And I'm like, perfect. Everyone acknowledge that, whatever. um, just making sure, it's the very similar or analogy I always think of. It's like playing a board game. Like, imagine if you're playing Monopoly and you don't know the rules, like this is gonna go horribly. Like, I'm gonna be bankrupt in jail before I even like get a couple squares. But hey, first thing let's read the rules, acknowledge the rules. If we want to change them, if we want to do this, a little bit of that, everyone's on the same page, so that we actually, again, are progressing no matter who you are together, and everyone feels safe, confident to be themselves and excel and succeed and all that. Versus, okay, if we just let nature and history play out, I think we all know who that's gonna favor and how that's necessarily gonna look. And there's really no point in repeating this cycle and this system that we basically can almost predict just by, close your eyes and throw a dart against the wall. I kind of know where it's just gonna go.
All right, Hakeem, you have thoughts?
I would say kind of look at what we have now, right? We have Black in Cyber, Black in Tech, RICES, Black Girls Hack, Women in Cyber, things, all those type of organizations we have. They didn't exist when I started. I wish I could have an organization like that to lean on, to know people that look like me and that's in the same field, right? So I would say that's for me, that's the progress I've seen, right? Having these organizations, them attending conferences, seeing more people that look like me at these conferences, right? And really connecting and having things like this that we're doing tonight. So I think that if are looking for a space to fit in or to feel that you belong to, or to help get that network, right? That village of people, start with one of those organizations or all of them, right? Join them, join a network, start, communicating with members and kind of build that way, right? And also attend conferences, network. Um, I think I wouldn't have struggled as much as I did early in my career if I'd had these type of groups that exist today.
Absolutely. And I just want to take that a step further and say, don't just join one of the organizations, join multiple of the organizations. These are not gangs, I'm saying. You can, you know, pick and choose what you need from the organization as it helps you along your career. There's nothing that says that you have to basically marry, just one organization. So, I think it's important for you to, see what different organizations are offering in terms of services, and see like, hey, which one of these fits my, I call it a world domination plan, but which one of these things fits my career path at this point in time, Ian, have you seen changes?
Yeah, I would say that there have been more positive changes, but there's still more ground to be tread, especially at that, within some of these tech companies at a higher level. Um, I would say that that would probably be the biggest thing. To you and Hakeem's point, there are so many more programs to bring together people of color and to find solidarity and to connect and to network and to continue to bring in more folks. But I do think that I think there should be more action at those, C-suite executive levels in certain companies where we do need more representation. But it's going to take time, you know what I mean? But I think things are moving in the right direction. I've seen positive changes.
Ooh, absolutely. So, quick question for you guys. Certifications, do you still think that they are relevant and necessary to achieve success in technology and cybersecurity?
Yeah, because companies is going to make sure that they always become, stay a thing, right? I think sometimes we get cert happy though, right? We try to go for a lot of certs, and sometimes folks fail to realize that you need a hands-on experience that could go with that, right? Um, and it could be as simple as creating a home lab, right? Set up a virtual machine and play with some tools, right? And really tailor it to what you want to do in the field, especially cert wise, right? You don't need to go get every cert in a book. Get certs that's geared towards what you want to do, right? That way, when you look at job postings, you check a box. They require specific certs, you check a box if you have them, right? Um, when I hire, I really don't care if you have certs. It's like, one, do I think you can do the job? Two, do I think I can train you? Are you trainable? Are you teachable? Um, and what do you bring to my team? Right? How you gonna make us better? But not every hiring manager is like me. Right? I wish they were. Right? More people have opportunities, but so that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think what Hakeem said. I wish there were more hiring managers like you. But yeah, that's the best people who I've met have that mentality where it's like, the certifications are great. It sharpens your skills. It shows that you took the time to and committed the time to actually finishing this, right? And use discretion. Just don't be cert happy, right? Like Hakeem mentioned, use good discretion in the sense of like, make sure that this is a tool. This is a usable tool for you. Um, with that said, it is something where the best hiring managers and just generally folks that I've met who have that ability to bring people in, usually it's like they're looking for those qualities of are you teachable, are you manageable, are you driven, um, are you uh, capable of just getting the job done. The certifications are excellent, but those it seems like those qualities, at least from the folks that I've had the pleasure of meeting, who have that type of ability to bring people and hire people, that's kind of what they're looking for. Personally, I think they are valuable when used with discretion, because there are some amazing certifications out there. There are some things that you probably wouldn't typically had learned otherwise had you not attempted to go for that certification, and it could be immensely useful. You know what I mean? So I think they're valuable. I don't think it's a make or break thing, but with discretion, I think they're certainly worthwhile.
Yeah, and just to foot stomp that, like getting to the topic of like world domination. Like I always there's two ways of taking over the world. There's the fist in the hand of going out and like, hey, by force, I'm gonna get every cert out there and I'm gonna overwhelm you with how like all my accolades and all my badges on my LinkedIn profile or email signature, whatever. But there's also like the carrot, kind of the hearts and minds of like, hey, actually gonna win you exactly as you said. I'm gonna win you over by showing you I actually understand this. And even if I have the cert or not, like that nuanced, deep understanding. So my always advice in this space is know your audience. Like, and I think this is really, this is a really, especially as you're looking to apply to jobs or looking for new opportunities, it's a really important skill to be able to read through the lines of like a job posting of like, hey, you're asking for Sec Plus or CCNA, whatever it is, PMP. Like, is that a nice to have? Is that a contractual requirement? Or are you just using that as a silhouette because you don't want to use all your words to describe, I need someone who understands product management. And, I've had experience in the past with PMPs that worked, but I don't necessarily need one going forward. And I think that's one of those things where you can kind of get a little bit surgical in terms of tearing apart job postings. It's also one of those things where, especially if you already have a network, reach out to folks like, "Hey, I saw this posting. I think this looks awesome. Is this how of a much of a checkbox is this? Is this a checkbox like they need to have this cert, or is it a like Hakeem said, a managerial discretion of, cool, I'll check that box for you because I understand. Like, yeah, it was a nice to have or an implication, but really kind of a suggestion. So I think it's kind of, and again, I think this applies to a lot of things. Is rather than just kind of following what other people said, or like, hey, I think other people are doing their, CISP, I'm going to do my CISP. Really taking a step back and saying, what am I actually trying to accomplish here? Am I working towards a certain goal? And if that goal is I want to get a CISP for me, I'm my own audience, go for it, crush it, you got this. But if it's, hey, I'm looking for a certain kind of job, go sample some resumes. If I'm looking for an entry-level security job, what are they asking for? Do they, am I going to spend the next 2 or 3 months getting this CISP? And then again, like all I can sit in an interview and like I can talk about the test, I can talk about the study guide versus, hey, should I do some more lab experience? Should I do more, watch more videos, whatever it is, and kind of, what are they actually looking for? So I always, even if people, and it's, I know I can hear my own mentors telling me this, like, you got to have goals. You got to have goals, you get goals. And I was like, I don't know where I am. Like, it's daunting to try to write those goals. But I think even if your goals are just, I want to get an entry level job, or I want to get promoted, or I want to kind of take that next step, you kind of have to do a little bit more research past that. Of you can't just, hey, what my dad used to run marathons, and his biggest advice was like, you never run the 26 and a half. You run 28, you run 30, because you can't be winded. You can't stop at the finish line. You really have to know what the next steps are. So even if it's kind of speculative and you're like, I'm not sure, if my job is to get that entry level role, I need to go look and I need to understand, what's past hiring, what's success look like, what's a good interview look like. And really that's going to help you crystallize and really understand, okay, to get to the finish line, here's how I, no, don't like, fall down at the finish line. This is how I do a backflip, and then kind of, jump over the finish line, and, selfies with the crowd and all that fun stuff. So it really just comes down to, long way of saying, really just, and I, maybe this is just me being weird because I'm an only child. Just sit on it, just think it through and say, milestones, whether it's a certification or certain skill. How do I prove to myself that I got to this point? How does that build to the next point and the next point and the next point, and eventually gets to me to where I am? And honestly, you can do that out 1 year, 3 years, 6 months, 1 week, 1 day. Hey, this week I want to learn how to set up a Linux network. Next week I want to learn how to, I heard this thing about zero trust. I'm going to learn about that. The next week I'm going to try to do something real small, like just even just baby steps, and one iteration at a time. But otherwise, again, I think you said you're just going to be, last thing you want to do, especially with how precious your time is, just doing stuff for the sake of doing stuff. I'm studying this book, I'm taking this test, I don't know why, but someone told me I should be here. That's just, that's one of those things, like, you might look back and like, oh, that was, at best you're going to get lucky. You just got to be a little bit more meticulous and more respectful of your own time and your own energy.
Jamie, I felt like you added me at the first part of your conversation, because I was today years old when I learned that there was a carrot approach, because I have 100% been the fist my entire career. So that, absolutely love that for us. So our next question comes from an anonymous attendee, and they want to know, along the way in their journey, they keep being told that technical things, even when they can't do technical things even when they are or are not the right type of person. Do you think that Black youth who are trying to get into the industry are getting gaslighted along the way when considering a career in tech?
I'd write that down in my journal. Whoever said that to me, I'd like, journal, got it. Nope. So I have a couple issues with this one. The idea of technical is, to me, silly. I think we talked about it earlier. Like, I think we always like to define technical as like, oh, you're coding, or you're an engineer, you're architect. Like, I talk to artists and I'm like, what you're doing is very, very technical. It's just not my definition of technical. So I think we need to kind of break that down and like, hey, like, you're in marketing, you're a creative, you're doing, policy. Like, there's a lot of technique, there's a lot of nuance, there's a lot of depth. And whether everything is on that spectrum of art and science, like, there's a lot of stuff that I do that people would think is very technical. I'm like, I'm kind of YOLOing this. This is very artistic. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just very technical with, I understand how to fail fast and learn and get better, but really I'm just kind of going with stuff and feeling the vibe and trying to figure stuff out. It might look real technical when I figure it out, but everything up to this point is chaos and art. So that point, and then again, I would push back, that's just not cool in terms of telling someone what they can and can't do, because there's been situations where I've mentored people where they stepped in a situation, they had no idea what was going on. And, a good example, actually, I'll pick on this because it's more tangible. I had a previous mentor who was a software engineer and led software engineers, did a bunch of really, really complicated development, all this hard work. And his background was, I hire musicians like strictly to be software devs because they understand patterns, they understand repetition, they understand flow, they understand all these concepts that technically I can't teach. They have an eye for attention to detail and all these things that make software very great. I can teach them syntax. Python's easy. I can teach them C. I can teach them. That's the technical part is the easy part. The intangibles that they bring to the table are phenomenal. And I think especially, and this is one of those places where journal moment, it's like, hey, you need people that see the world in that way or can be exposed in the world that way. Will actually, rather than I'm going to, as a manager, I'm going to embrace and, pursue success in the way that I think things are successful. Open your mind up and say, there's a lot of ways to get to where we need to be. And I'm going to make use of the resources I have available to me at the best of their capability, whether they're a pianist or a 20-year groomed producer of clean code. So I think it really comes down to don't take that to heart. Like Hakeem said before, don't take that personal. That's just one of those situations, right? I'm like lift and shift. Like, hey, if that's how you think, congratulations, warmest regards. Hope you figure that out for you, but that's just not an environment where your particular light and your uniqueness and your talents are really ever going to be appreciated. So I'm 90-degree pivot upward and onward.
I would say never allow someone to tell you what you cannot do. If you have a will and a passion, you can literally do anything you want, right? I think sometimes we do get discouraged because we have people around us that discourage us. And a lot of times it's because they can't do what you do, right? They don't have that ability or that knowledge, right? And instead of them learning from you and trying to build you up, they knock you down, right? Throughout my career, I've had that. Right? I was told I was never going to make it in this field when I first started out, although that almost became true after a few years when I burnt out. Um, in the military, I was told I was never going to make it past boot camp, and I did 10 years in. Right. Even as a manager, right, I was told that the team I built was never going to make it, and we won $100 million contract. So if you have a passion for it, if you know you can do it, do it. Right. Don't worry about people. Just prove yourself right. Right. Always bet on yourself, no matter what.
That's a good point. And like I said, don't take anything personal, but there'll forever be at least one or two people that are preying on your downfall. And you just have to like acknowledge, like some people just don't want to see other people succeed, whether it's you personally or your silhouette of you or whatever it is. Yeah, that's a good point. Is you just, yeah, there's gonna be bumps in the road that just are there.
And do you have thoughts?
No, I think Jamie and Hakeem nailed it. Like, people won't get mad. People get mad about anything. Don't let it put a wrinkle in your forehead. You know what I mean? Like, keep moving. Um, it takes time. That's all. But the last thing you want to do is let someone take you off your soul and deter you. Um, yeah, I think Hakeem and Jamie nailed it. I don't have anything else to add to that.
I think it's interesting that you guys addressed that. I actually had this conversation, this thought in my mind at the start, and I was wondering, like, do men's perspective in the tech and cybersecurity space differ that much differently from women? Because I know for myself, and I hear from a lot of young women at Black Girls Hack that the assumption is that we're not technical, right? And when people meet them, and then like I have never been quick enough to run down my resume and my accolades than somebody telling me that they think I'm not technical or I'm not qualified. So it's interesting that that's been, I guess, your collective experience, because I was just wondering if this is just the difference between being a woman of color versus being a male of color, a person of color, just in terms of the experience. Just something I was just thinking about. So, question, is it better to niche down when someone has 7 years of experience or keep learning different topics in cyber? So, how do you, and then the second part to this question is, how are you going to argue for a higher title and or salary band? So
That's a
should you
great
specialize
question.
and ask for more money?
Yeah. Couple things. One, it also goes back to like what you personally want to do, right? What your passion is, what you want to do in this field, right? As someone who's jumped on different niche, right? Become kind of a jack of all, I would say it does help when you can hone in on one or two specific areas and market that, right? And I'll give you a great example, zero trust, right? Stupid buzzword, no one cares about it, right? But it's a niche, especially in the government area, right? So for me, I know I can maximize what it takes to understand and do zero trust over the next 10 years because that's where the government is going. So as long as I specialize in that, I'm always gonna have a paycheck, right? So when I think of niche, that's what I think of, right? Kind of putting yourself into an area and maximize your knowledge, your skill set, being able to do it, and just your earning potential in that area can really grow depending on the effort you put in, right? As my buddy Jay said, don't get outworked today, right? So as long as you're really not getting outworked and you're putting in what needed, perfect. But I think sometimes people come into the field trying to do too many disciplines at once, right? Instead of focusing on one and then building from that. I think the person said they've been in for 7 years, so you might have already touched multiple disciplines. So now it's just kind of doing some of your research, seeing where those disciplines are going and where you want to focus on, right? And there's a second part to that question, wasn't it?
Asking about a higher, how do you advocate for yourself for a higher title and more pay?
First thing is market research, right? Understanding what specific titles or skill sets are going for. Speak to people that's in the field that's probably doing the same thing. Hopefully they're transparent. Some people you come across won't be transparent on what they're making, right? Sadly. Um, but I would say be confident, right? Know what you want, know your bare minimum, right? And just be confident that companies are always going to try to lowball you, but if you stick to your guns and you know you command, you should be getting what you commanded because of your knowledge, your skill set, and what they need, you're gonna be fine.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that? I will say that I would probably combine Hakeem's response with Jamie's. Like, so if you're keeping records of what it is that you're doing, you have like, this is the value that I've brought, this is what I did on this day, this month, this whatever. If you're keeping track of that, building a business case to explain why you need that that higher title, why the value that you bring to that organization meets that higher title and is deserving of that higher pay is going to be an easier thing than just saying like, hey, I feel like I've done something amazing, right? People can't lie to this is the concrete value. This is the impact that I did this X%. I saved this much. I brought on this much business. I did these things, right? When you come with concrete things, especially as they relate to whatever the job description is of that higher position, as a hiring manager, I can't argue with that. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm going to be like, I agree. Let's see what we can do, right? And that's a lot more, I think, precision than just saying like, hey, I feel like I'm doing a great job. You should recognize the value that I'm bringing, especially when you've got like, multiple people within like an org or a line of business, like somebody keeping track of that many people and the value that they bring. They may not be, actually remember all of the amazing things that you've done. So keep records and make sure that, when you have your performance evaluation, when you make the business case for this, that you're bringing those things out.
That's exactly where I was gonna go. Is it might not be the person, like depending on where you are in an organization, might not be the person right above you. Somewhere up there, someone's already doing that math, and they have a number of like this is actually how much like you're worth. So it's really just exactly like you said, keep your receipts and figure out, like what do I think their number is? And I think like what like Hakeem said, like, hey, like what are other they're looking doing market research of hey, we're paying so and so this much money, our competitors are doing this. They know there's an accountant, there's someone there, they have that on spreadsheet somewhere. So it's mostly just hey, are you gonna, exactly like you said, are you gonna advocate for yourself and read the room and understand not just what you're valuable, like how valuable are you now, how valuable are you next year? And I think that one of the things that I always forget, especially, you're just thinking, oh, I'm just a lowly employee, how much organizations spend and like time and resources to replace you. Just like, hey, like I have 7 years of institutional knowledge. Like that's almost invaluable. So like even if they hired someone, with equal as much experience, it's going to take them a lot of time just to reproduce all the trust, the connections, the workflow, all those things. And I think you kind of start to, not necessarily saying, you're going to come down as a hammer on your employer and say, hey, I demand this. Like if sometimes that's required, but I think it comes all back to what we were saying before is exactly like you said, keep those receipts, write that down. But also, I think getting back to what Hakeem said about the confidence, I think that comes to your question about like, do I go niche? Do I diversify? Like where are you most confident? Like don't chase the money and oh, everyone's doing this and I'm going to do it too. Like you really need to understand, hey, if I'm going to commit to learning zero trust and I'm going to be like a rock star in that space, I got to make sure I'm actually a rock star in that space. And if and this gets back to what I was saying before, failing fast. If I took the first class and I'm like, well, this doesn't make any sense to me. I need to get out, ripcord, what's the next thing? Or maybe I go back to whatever I was doing and get better because again, I've seen people that have been jack of all trades, good at everything, and they can and again, they're confident and understand this is who I am, this is how I market that, and these are the situations where I excel. Versus, I know that kind of person. I can't throw them on a very deep, singular topic. They're going to eventually kind of fizzle out. They're more integrators of, hey, I can talk to 10 people at the same time about something really, really complex and bring it all together versus I've seen people in the same respect do those same exact thing their entire career. And you're like, wow, how does this person sustain? Because when, something goes wrong or there's some deadline, we're like, I know exactly who to talk to. Like this person's seen this 10 times. There's no one in the world who's dealt with as much crap as this person in this topic. They're invaluable. I don't know how we would ever like they might not be, the star of the show every time we have a meeting, the most like charismatic, can talk to the finance people and make everyone laugh and do all this fun stuff. But, there's been again writing it down, there's been a dozen times where, everyone was panicking and they just sat cool as a cucumber and said, hey, make sure you do XYZ. And we're like, oh crap, like thank you, you paid for your salary today. Like, thank you. So I think it just really comes down to, again, exactly as you both said, like read the room, know your worth, and kind of be true to yourself because last thing you want to do is be in an interview or be in a presentation and you're just like you're trying to sell something that you're not. Like, when we've all kind of been in those situations where you kind of maybe have to kind of oversell things or hey, I can get this done by the end of the week or I'll figure it out, and like you kind of have to eat your own dog food there. But last thing you want to do is get this big slick roll, huge promotion, and you're like, as every day in and out of this job is going to be just a haul. Like and I've been in jobs like that where you're looking at the wall and like the clock is slow and you do some stuff, you look up and it's 10:30 in the morning and you're like, like the money's great, but like it's a ticking time bomb. And you're like, it's only so long I'm going to make it like this. So I think, and I think that that's an interesting topic too, is it's a lot of stuff in this tech space is money's great. I think tech pays very, very well. I think it's, objectively one of the more financially appreciated industries in at least in our economy. But that said, it's not everything. I've, especially people that mentor me, I've talked to them and over time it's like, hey, I've seen people take lesser paying jobs of like, hey, quality of life, the work, the everything around this for whatever reason it just makes more sense. And I think, obviously it's a blessing and a privilege to get to that point. But I think this gets back to like just kind of being true to yourself and, where am I? And I think that's, and especially other point of this, I'm kind of rambling a bit, but tech is one of those places too where it's really easy to do side hustles. Of like, hey, like I'm taking this job I love. This is phenomenal. But like it doesn't necessarily pay all the bills or it doesn't necessarily get me to where I want to be. So it's really easy to do, and I'm going to speak my own stuff. It's really easy to do stuff on the side, especially when you are that person, whether it's that jack of all trades or that, I'm an expert in this one thing and no one works harder than me day in, day out on this topic. so easy to make connections and kind of, build out whatever that profile, whatever that presence that you really want and that you really bring to the table, really make that a reality.
So you mentioned mentorship, and that leads into our next question, and I'll let Ian kick this one off. What role does mentorship play in acquiring a role in tech, and what are some of the tips that you have for someone who has a non-traditional background in finding mentorship and transitioning into tech?
Yeah. To address the first part of the question, I think mentorships are really important. Um, I think in order to find one, we talked about on this call, insofar as all the uh, grassroots programs and resources that do exist, where there are so many more outlets and communities for Black folks in technology, in so many different disciplines. Those are great places to go and find mentorship. Just introducing yourself, networking, and connecting with those folks. Um, the value in mentorships are that you have someone who you can bounce ideas off of, ask them for work. It might not even, as Jamie mentioned, this is an industry where you can do side hustles. um, One of the first, when I was looking for a job, when I was starting out, I was fortunate enough to have a mentor. I believe he worked at GSK, uh, for a while, and he had a side hustle where he would develop, uh, what is it, Swift apps. So he gave me some things to do, like, yeah, like, build out this layout, integrate this database in here, and I'll hook you up for that, right? And that was great. Like, it gave me some hands-on experience, put a little bit of money in my pocket. Not to say every mentor is like that. But just being able to have someone who can have those conversations with you, give you their perspective, and provide you with their experiences that you can kind of take in and internalize, it helps. um, Not all mentorships will necessarily lead into a job, but it certainly helps. I think the real value is just having that type of support, like having someone on the inside who can tell you about things and point you in the right direction. Like I said, networking is the biggest thing. There's so many different outlets now where even just making colleagues, people who oh yeah, you guys, we're working on this program, yeah, let me jump aboard. And this kind of 3 degrees of connections, right, where you knew someone who knew someone, they put you and connected you to someone who's a manager at some company, right, company X, and now that's your mentor, right? So it's super invaluable, having that experience, just not even from from whether it's potential opportunities, but at a very fundamental level, um, just being able to get more information, especially starting off, where it's not this isn't something where there's a already beaten path. The second part of that question, I believe, was someone who doesn't have like that non-traditional route into technology. Again, mentorships are extremely valuable because that is your path, or at least that's a stepping stone on your path, right? Someone who has taken a path, they can give you some guidance and some advice on how you can approach it. Um, so yeah, I think there's so many positives to mentorship. You don't have to walk it alone. You know what I mean? Like, when you go and enter this industry, and I think oftentimes a lot of folks, at least for me, I guess what would be called like a transplant. Someone who was in another career path and then transitioned into tech. Um, you'll find that there's no one way to get into this. And just being able to bounce ideas and have a roadmap that isn't going to be one to yours, but um, that mentorship is a part of the process. I mean, that's kind of like a check mark on your road to your goal in the career, right? Having a mentor is a very pivotal um, relationship on that road. So hopefully that helps. My comments.
I'm
Awesome.
gonna jump in
Go ahead.
if I can. So I would say also determine what you want to do, right? As you transition in, do you want to be technical or non-technical? Because that's going to help you with your mentors, right? First, I'm a firm believer that you should have mentors in this field, even out of this field. Um, for instance, as a male, not all my mentors are males, right? Because I don't see a lot of things that happen in this field, right? Like, so from a female perspective, I don't see everything that's happening, right? So I can't talk to a lot of things, and I have mentees that's females, right? So for me to understand really the full landscape of this field and even how to maneuver, how to grow, right? How to have a diverse team, how to talk to different people, I need to be able to have the same thing around me, right? And in my network. So I have mentors that are males, females, uh, white, black, Hispanic, right? Because I like that diversity. I like to have those different people helping me, and I do the same thing as a mentor myself. But if you can determine what you want to do, that helps, right? So if you want to just do technical roles and you're coming from a non-technical background, having technical mentors will probably help you. But also, if you can find a mentor that transition in from a non-technical, that's probably going to help you more than anything. So it's really just, as Ann said, network, find these people, and really just dive in, and don't be scared to reach out and ask someone, can they be your mentor? Right. The worst they can say is no, but more often than not, they're going to say yes or point you to someone else who can help you.
Yep. Just real quick, just yeah, have many mentors, right? It's not like dating, right? You can have as many mentors as you need to, right? Don't be shy.
Only thing I was gonna add to that is also like be selective about who you take as a mentor, because it's a huge investment on both sides. Like, hey, like, I'm a big, try to be transparent as possible. Like, hey, if I'm gonna mentor you, I'm fully in. Like, and my job as a mentor is to open doors for you, or at least help you see doors. And I need to be we're gonna be committed in the same headspace, or this isn't gonna work. And I've been on the other end of that where I've had a mentor where I'm like, I don't necessarily, I appreciate their time. I think it's all well intended. I don't necessarily think the commitment level or like the insights or the definite direction, it just doesn't really work out. And I don't want to just go through this and, play pageantry of, oh yeah, yeah, good, good, good. And I'm not actually following through. So it's like, hey, like I'm going to be very, professional, respectful, but like, I just I don't want to waste your time, to be completely honest. Like, not saying you're a waste of time. It's we're just not there. So I'm going to be respectful of your time and energy, and I don't want you opening doors that I don't necessarily want to walk through. So I think it's just kind of being, again, it's like everything we said, just respect your own time, your own vision, learn, adapt, evolve, but also just, mentee relationships it's a huge commitment. Because I've gone out on a leg and said, hey, hire this person. They're great. Like that kind of, that's kind of that like build and that trust and that relationship you develop over time, but that's not something you can just sling around, because it's as big as this industry is, it's a small people, word spreads where, hey, I recommended this person, they went and acted a fool. Now I'm like, that's a reflection of me. And I'm like, like I'm withholding, like, I don't know how many people I can mentor and do that for, because it burned me, versus like, hey, like everyone that kind of goes to the school of, what I think, like we're here, like nothing, you'll never surprise me unless it's in a good way.
Absolutely. All right. So as we are coming up to the end of our time here, this has been an amazing conversation, gentlemen. I have grown greatly from this conversation, so I'm appreciative. As we close out, what advice would you have for the next generation, for youth or next generation, especially those who identify as Black?
I can kick this one off. And I think it almost goes with exactly you said. The thing that I always took for granted was gratitude. And like, I'm going to use that towards you. Like, I appreciate you spending time and energy of your, busy Tuesday evening. And I think that's something that we just kind of take for granted, is you kind of go through life and you're like, hey, like these things worked out, but take a look around and realize like a lot of stuff that happens, whether it's, in your community, it's not by your own doing. There's people advocating for you. There's people mentoring you, people helping you, people, spending time to moderate your panel and ask you fun questions. Like whatever it is, like never, even if it's just taking that extra moment, like, you went through an interview and just, hey, I appreciate whether or not I get the job. I appreciate you actually taking time out of your day to be here. I appreciate you taking your time out of your day to share this topic with me, teach me, give me feedback, whatever it is. Those little moments, not just to, pageantry of, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Like that actually is for me important to remember, like, hey, these people are sending me good energy. They're giving me knowledge. They're giving me resources. And I not only need to like acknowledge and respect that, but now it's that reminder of what can I do for other people? I'm getting all these blessings and all these resources. How can I pay that forward? How can what can I provide to the next person? So I think it's just, never forget that gratitude. And I think that that's kind of really how you build that network and that bubble of like, really, we're going to, again, world domination. This isn't a singular, world domination is not a singular sport. It's a very much a team activity. And if you can kind of build that network, you'll slowly realize how attainable that world domination really is.
I love it. Hakeem.
Yeah, I would say first you belong in the field, right? As you start out, you're gonna think you don't belong, you belong. Work hard, figure out what you want to do in the field and attack it. And just don't give up.
Ian.
Um, a good attitude can go a long way. Sometimes you don't have to be the most technically savvy. Sometimes you don't have to be, this super expert on something. Just having good energy, I mean, like, oh, this person just has a good work ethic. Like a lot of times that 50-50 where it's like, hey, this, you know what, they might not have it now, but they have such a good attitude. They always come in prepared, on time, ready to do what they're going to get it. You know, the confidence that people can have in you from having a good attitude can go so far. So that would be one thing. And, don't be afraid to try and don't be afraid to fail. Like, if anything, fail fast, learn, and keep pushing, right? Shooter's mentality. So that would be my advice.
Absolutely. And I will leave a piece of advice, and that is there are a lot of organizations that are out here that are doing amazing work for the community that do things like make it financially easier to get into cybersecurity and technology, to network, things of that nature, right? So join the organizations. There's a lot of them out there. Black Girls Act is open to all, regardless of everything. So, and there are other organizations as well that are absolutely amazing. So do some research, find out what organizations are offering what, and become a part of those communities so you can, use them to achieve your world domination. So I am grateful for Dr. Reggae, Dr. Bleeman, for, in the Care Lab for hosting this. Super exciting to see a panel full of Black men, and I absolutely love that for us, especially during Black History Month. So thank you all for coming out and for supporting this Care Labs event, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you,
Cheers.
everybody. Also, Black Tech Philly, we're always looking for folks come by. We have different sessions and workshops. Our website's blacktechphilly.org. So, and thank you, everyone.
Awesome.